it is my privilege to get to introduce Ginny. 30 years ago, my family and I moved to Brookings, but for the 4 years before that, we lived in Madison, and there was a very active artist community. Ginny was a part of that. Ginny's been a friend since then. I've seen many of her exhibits, but I know I don't know everything, so I am particularly looking forward to hearing this program as well. But I want to read you this background to make sure we all have it as we start. Ginny Freitag is an artist and retired teacher living in Madison, South Dakota. She primarily works in mixed media ceramic, sculpting the female figure and its relationships with nature and ritual. She also incorporates found objects into her works. Some of them she discovers while hiking in the outdoors and others while wandering through flea markets. Ginny tries to create a narrative in her work that the viewer can translate into their own experience. She graduated from Dakota State University in 1984 with a bachelor's degree and a major in art. She retired from Madison School District in 2018 and currently creates her art from a studio in her home. Ginny received a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts in 1996. I need you to talk about that because I somehow missed that. And an artist project grant from the South Dakota Arts Council in 2012. She has been in 1- and 2-person shows at the Oscar Howe Art Center, cross paths there. Where are we now? She's the South Dakota Art Museum, the Firehouse Gallery, East Bank Gallery, and the Carl Mott Library, as well as many group shows. Ginny is also a founding member of Journey Women, a group of female artists who have had 3 exhibitions at the Washington Pavilion. I know I've seen them all. Ginny has taken numerous graduate classes, also spending time in Grand Marais each summer in a mentored workshop with noted artist and woman activist Hazel Belville. Ginny lists artists Connie Herring, I do too, and Hazel Belville as major influences in the development of her work. Thank you for coming, Ginny. So good to have you here.
Hi there, again, I'm Ginny, and Karen and I do go way back. It's crazy to think how quickly time has passed, I guess, and it's neat that we're both still making art. So that I'm really grateful for that we do that. When I was asked by John to present, I thought about what I would say, and he said, I need a title, and I just said, okay, my life with clay, because clay has been integral in my life since I was about 20 years old. Connie Herring introduced me to clay, and I have found that it has helped me through some times, actually physically working with the clay, and that's been very, very important to me. So I love clay. It is definitely my medium, and I love the found object aspect as well, working with that. This piece I brought with me today is kind of an experiment in different glazes and oxides and firing schedules. So I'll talk about that a little bit too. But anyway, thank you for inviting me, and it's really exciting to be with a group of people and who want to hear about art today. I find myself so often these days getting into even with groups of friends, and all of a sudden it's politics and other things come in, and by the time we're all done, it's heavy. And I always find art to be the opposite for me. Art opens up and sometimes allows us to heal and find other ways and methods maybe to deal with these things. So it's just nice to be in a room with all of you. And I hope that at any point, if you want to just interrupt me and ask a question, that would be great as far as I'm concerned. I want to be kind of loose with this and tell stories. That's kind of how I work. And we'll just see how it turns out here. So I'll go to the first slide here. Early formative years, and that's my family. Growing up at Lake Madison, we had our Sears Roebuck matching swimsuits. That's my dad. He was an optometrist in the Madison area for all of his life. My mom, he was from Sioux Falls. My mom was from Miller, and then the 3 of us girls, and then my little brother Bill. So yeah, we had really a great time growing up on the lake. And for me, like Patty, my oldest sister there, she was 10 years older by the time we were living there. So I was the one who really got immersed into that whole thing. And I'm very grateful for it because that's where I think I started with my art. I put down exploring and creating. My mom, even though she was kind of strict, she liked to clean house. We had to help her with laundry and folding and sometimes ironing and setting the table and things like that you did back then. But she was kind of strict, but she always had a spot for me to make art, always. And that was kind of a big deal. In the summer, it was the picnic table. And in the winter, it was a table down by her laundry. And they're in my brain as very magical places. She also had a coffee can that we would heat up and we'd make sand candles out on the beach. That was really fun. I collected rocks. I had piles of rocks all over, and that was a big deal. I knew where the clam shells, the clam beds were, and I would wait, you know, find washed up pieces, and I would always take those home and decorate them. Picking up bones was big. When I was young, I wanted to go into archaeology or paleontology, and I remember being a little girl at St. Thomas School, and the counselor came in from the high school, and he said, "So what do you all want to be?" And I raised my hand and told him, "An archaeologist. I want to dig dinosaurs." At the time, you know, I thought that was an archaeologist, and he said, no, that's not a good job for a girl. You need to be at home because they're always traveling." And I was like, oh. So I went home and told my folks, and they were not really happy, but that was he was a friend of theirs. So I don't know, they couldn't say a lot, but they weren't in agreement with that being the case. But I was always looking at bones and thinking that they were from a dinosaur, even if they were from a fish or a bird or something like that. I was always sure. Another thing that's not as cool was back in the day where we lived on the lake, it's now packed. It's one of the most, I mean, it's just a really fun place. People all over Sioux Falls want to get on Peninsula Park. It's a point on Lake Madison. I lived there when there were 4 houses on that huge point. There's probably 40 now, but there were 4. So I ran everywhere, and the people who lived at the points or in the other 2 places, one of which was ours, they knew me. They always said hello. I remember getting up and putting on a life jacket and running around. And I knew where the clam beds were. I knew where, you know, my dad and I would fish at night, and we would eat fish. Mom would clean them on the picnic table. But it was just such a free way to grow up and do all these kinds of things. But there were, across the lake at that point, Scullies, who were good friends of ours. They had cows, and the cows would always come down to the edge of the water and drink and wade in when it got hot. So every year that I remember until I was older, I had to go into the doctor for ringworm. And the doctor always said, "You've been swimming with the cows again." And I said, "Well, not on purpose, I'm not. They're way across over there. I don't know how I'm getting it." But yeah, that my mom didn't like that. But another thing we did was paint rocks a lot. And those aren't mine or anything there. It's just a standard picture that all those 4 are just pulled up pictures of my memories. And then driftwood was a big one for me. And I remember taking pieces of driftwood and, you know, taking a seashell and making a pillow for it. I learned how to sew very young, and fixing it on the driftwood and then painting a rock for it and then taking it over to a neighbor. And they would always make such a huge deal about it. So I was always encouraged, but this kind of free, natural youth that I had, you know, I really am thankful for it. I think it definitely has changed the way I see things and what I want in life. I need to get to the water from time to time. I don't live on the lake. I love going to the Gulf of Mexico and places like that and just wandering. My husband is a biologist and a birder, so he loves to look at the birds, and he's looking up, and I'm always looking down at seashells, and that's kind of the way we work together. When I was young, a few things that kind of helped me along the way was, and first one's probably a bad thing, I was always the class artist. I went to a small Catholic school, and the nuns immediately kind of tagged me as an artist. And there was one of my really good friends, Bridget, and she was also a really good artist, and we were kind of both these class artists, but I think it is partly hard on the other kids. You know, I bet they kind of gave up when, you know, every time somebody needed something special, we got to go aside and make it. Like it was a card for somebody or whatever. We were put in charge of that. Our artwork was always featured. And as that was good for me, I'm sure it was hurtful to others. And I think later as an educator, I realized that there wasn't a good artist. There were many, many, many good artists. It was like, it's not one ever. You know, somebody might be good at rendering something realistically, but somebody else might be very playful and have a style that they've already developed. Somebody else might be really good with color or whatever it is. So many people have their different ways of being that artist. So I don't know what that first one, it always made me feel good when I was young, but I'm not sure it was really a good thing. My mom also put classes.
Don't worry about that.
Okay, my mom, there were some classes offered at the college on the weekends where people taught, oh, just painting and drawing and different fun things. It wasn't craft, it was acrylic painting and charcoal drawing and things like that. And I really got into that. That really helped a lot. And I remained friends with those people until they passed, the teachers. And one of them recently, you know, she was actually a clay person, but she also painted, Linda Hildy, and she passed in the last few years, and she was really kind of important too for me. Studio space, like I said, my mom always had the table set up for me, so having a space to create and supplies was huge. You know, I mean, I think nowadays parents are really, you know, they're cognizant of that. Oftentimes have the tools there for their kids, but I don't think growing up, I don't think a lot of my friends probably did. I was really lucky to have that space. So, can't see that. I don't know if I can I just put an X on that thing?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. All right. So this says my art education. So we're skipping all the way to college. So what's that about? We went from me being at a Catholic school to college. And what happened was in junior high, I was taking home ec and learning to sew. And I was also taking plastics, where we were bending plastics in an oven down in the basement. I don't know how safe that all was, but that was something that we did. It was like a shop class. And then in high school, we had, for a while, the art teacher was not understanding. So there wasn't a consistent program. So I was kind of working really hard on the sciences and math at that point. My dad being a doctor, my mom being a nurse, I just thought I should get the science and math, even though I would later kind of abandon that idea. So I really didn't hit any of that, the art classes in high school. When I hit college, my first year I started in a pre-med program at USD. And I quickly realized that it just wasn't gonna work. I got kind of squeamish about a few things, and when we visited a few places, and I didn't know for sure. So I came back to Dakota State, took an art class and an EMT class, and I realized real quickly that I was not cut out to handle emergencies and that would be something I'd have to do. So I kind of started focusing in on the art. And I met two very important people, and that was Connie Herring, and she was my professor. There she is later. She's working with a puppet right there. And it's just the neatest thing. But she was and is one of the important people in my life. She's always been there for me during school, and then later on, I was divorced and I was doing a sidewalk show or something, a park show, and she came up and said, "What are you up to?" And I said, "Well, just kind of making some things." And "What are you up to?" And she said, "I don't know, but let's go on a trip and go look at art." So we took off and went on a trip and saw art, and then I just began working, and we began communicating all the time and going to look at museums and things. And she introduced me to clay. So in college, my clay was a lot of slab work, but I was doing mermaids in college. My senior show was all mermaids. So going ahead here, Steve Henslin was the other professor at DSU, and he was a sculptor. And he worked in steel, and he was the exact opposite of Connie. He was a very confident, might even say arrogant male, and he just loved all of us students. And he would prod us and poke us with questions about why we were doing what we were doing. And he was the only guy in the crowd. And sometimes he didn't get our work or didn't know where it was coming from. And he made us talk about it. And he made us explain what we were doing. And so he and Connie were such an incredible balance. He unfortunately passed away, I think at the age of 61, which is right where I'm at right now. Hi, Z. There's one of my partners in crime right there. Anyway, so Steve was a good balance to Connie, and we learned a lot from them, all of us in the group that was in art at the time. So next, you know, I graduate. I have a senior art show. I had that slide, but it doesn't look like I've put it in, so it's not showing up on this one. I hope that it shows up on the latter. I hope the latter slides show up that I added. But anyway, I was married twice. I had my two boys, Darrell and Julian, and then I was married to Dale, and he's the one I was talking about, who is a professor at DSU. He's retiring this year, and there I am with our daughter Simone. So I have a family. And so that takes time from making art. Although I always have a studio space in the house where I'm usually working on mixed media pieces. I also begin teaching middle school. And what's kind of fun about this is just, I decided those kids, you know, I loved that period of my life. I really did. It was hard. You know, they're a challenge every day, but they're also really wanting to work hard. They do. They want to work hard. They want to learn. They haven't kind of gotten too cool yet. You know, they have a lot of energy. So it was a lot of work, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I learned from them every day, something. Sometimes things I shouldn't learn. My husband doesn't appreciate my humor. I have middle school humor, and I don't think very many people probably do appreciate it, but oh well. So I had a thing happen. I was watching a Sunday morning episode where they were talking about the Japanese art of food and how when you go to Japan and you're ordering something, a lot of times the windows will have the art. It's made of plastics, and it's a huge art thing. And they were showing people who collect the food, and a couple of my students saw it, and they immediately came in and said, "Did you see it?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it with clay." So I showed the class the excerpt of that show, and they thought it was really cool. And so we decided that we were going to make clay food and set a table in the front of the school with a white tablecloth, candlesticks. We got plates. We did the whole thing, and then restaurants in town came in and judged which plate they liked best, which was the only mistake there. We should have left everybody even, like I was talking about before, because some kids who had loved their work went, "Well, I didn't get first." So I never had a jury after that. The first time it was kind of their idea as well, and I just said no from then on. I said, "No, they're all so good. We'll invite lots of people to come look, and they can tell you how much they like it themselves, but we don't have to judge it." So this one is probably a box that opens, but those are clay strawberries. So that was made out of clay. There's a mixed berry tart. Island made that one, and she's in, she wants to do costumes for the movies. Lemon tart. I love Canopic Jars, and I'll get to that in a bit, but I was always kind of into ancient Egypt, and the Canopic Jars were always like, "Oh, that's crazy. That's so cool." So I kind of taught a unit on that, which hit a lot of good things. You know, you can teach about another culture, and you can introduce a new technique, and they have to come up with an original idea. It kind of hits, on all the different points we're trying to hit standards in the state. So these were some fun ones. There's a mural we did. It's 4 by 8 feet. And we were all doing squares of it. And that is it before it was finished. But it's a Frida Kahlo piece. And we picked it out, and then we kind of worked in a class and also after school on it. And we lost our windows to construction of a gym. So we didn't want to see just concrete through the window. It was blocks, you know. So we put murals in the 2 windows we had. And this is one of them, and I asked for it because they wanted to get it out of there. They were going to paint everything white. So I asked to have that back. And so it hangs when you enter my house. But, and it, like I said, it's finished. That top area right up in here, that's all filled in now, and it's sealed down better. But I just love it. And I have the newspaper clipping of all the students who helped on it. They got their picture in the paper. This was a really cool project we did with Cheryl Halsey Peterson. She was an artist in schools, and she came in and we did these pieces. And before she came, she said, I'm going to need a lot of different materials to work with. So about a month before she came, I put all these boxes in the classroom, and I said, this is natural, this is recycled, this is junk computer parts, this is this and that. And I said, it started coming in, but then it kind of, the students were bringing stuff and then it stopped. So I said, how about, we laugh about this is not a good thing, but I offered them chocolate for bringing in things, and the boxes were full in no time. So Cheryl came in and she was like, oh, this is going to be the best ever. And we actually were featured in, is it Artists in Schools? What's the big art magazine for schools? School Arts? School Arts, that probably was it, yeah. So we got a big, actually she's the one who worked on it, but our students got featured in there. So I was really happy with those. The problem is, what do you do with all these huge projects when they're done and they belong to groups of people? We put them around school for a while. There are still some in the offices and libraries, but then we put a couple of them up on the auction, the silent auction for the Madison Education Foundation, and they went for scholarships and different things, and that was a good place too. Okay, so someone asked me about this earlier. What makes me want to make a piece or create a piece? And I think when it comes to that, I'd say I put up some words there. First of all, I'm a woman. So having a woman's experience in this world, a lot of my work is going to come from that. I had a guy saying once upon a time, he said, I really want one of your pieces, but you have to make a guy. And I said, you know, not that I don't like the male figure, it's not that, it's just I don't have the experience with that. I could put, you know, a couple together, I suppose, but I usually work with just one figure. But I just, yeah, so as my experiences as a woman is a definite influence in my work. Also as a mother, you know, I think a mother and nurturer. I have 2 of my very good friends, don't have children, but they are the most nurturing people I know. They nurture students and all kinds of animals. And so I think, you know, that mother nurturer thing doesn't necessarily mean biological mother or something like that, or mother of human children. It can be a lot of different things. But with my kids, it's just been a huge thing. And then family, right? You know, you have a family unit, and that's pretty important. Losing my dad was really a hard one for me, and I found clay to be the only thing that rescued me after that. I just went into my studio and started working, and then John called me, John Richter, and said, we'd like to have you up at the South Dakota Artist Series we do and exhibit. And I said, okay, that sounds great. And he thought I was bringing my mixed media boxes, and I arrived with all of this clay I'd done after my father passed. And he was like, wow. And a lot of that work came from that period of time. And it was just very important. And then, well, it'll be 8 years ago this summer, I lost my son in a car accident. And that has been horrible, absolutely horrible. You never really quit grieving, I guess, but almost every day, something he did or said or a picture of him pops up and I crack up laughing because he was fun and loving. And so, you know, he left me with a lot of good, but, you know, I feel again, you know, being able to have an artistic outlet was really important. When I lost Julian, I drilled rocks. I went up to Grand Marais and I collected rocks, and I drilled rocks and made necklaces for the longest time. And then I did get back to my clay, but I think art has gotten me through a lot of things, and it's helped me celebrate things and get through things. Nature is on there. How can we avoid that, right? I grew up so surrounded by nature. I talked about that earlier. So it always comes into my work. I'm always looking for seashells when I go to bodies of water, pieces of driftwood, sticks. I love driftwood. I've found so many odds and ends, especially at beaches, that I just love. Also, I guess I can talk a little bit about mixed media here too. This particular piece doesn't have a lot of mixed media with it. It just has a piece of coral that I found. But this vase down here would definitely be a treasure. I was recently visiting my daughter. She lives in an apartment in Lincoln, and I said, how come you didn't tell me there was an architectural salvage across the street? And she said, because I don't go over there. And so I went in, and it's like the Connor Brothers architectural salvage, and I walked into a fantasy world. I mean, it's estates that have been just, I guess somebody takes them apart, and they have all of the doors and the fixtures, and I got all these column bases, and so I have boxes of these now. And I just had a blast in there, and I got big ring moldings from oil lamps that look like crowns, and just all kinds of fun things. So I love to salvage and look for things. Fragility, I've kind of talked about that. The fragility of our own lives, our family lives, I guess, our existence, and possibly, you know, our planet, when we see the animals disappearing and things like that happening. And I don't want to dwell on that because that's really hard, but I think this piece is about coral. You know, this is coral in her hair, or supposed to be for me. And I think I'm going to make a coral piece of clay, but right now I just have that one in there. But I think about those kinds of things. I think about the water a lot. Lake Madison has changed so much since I was a little girl playing there. You know, it's the weeds don't grow anymore. It's just so much algae that the weeds don't come up from the bottom anymore. So the whole dynamic has changed, and my husband has studied that quite a few times. And, you know, there's issues there. Beauty. I also look, you can't live in this beautiful world without noticing all the beauty around us every day. The color, texture, the pattern, nature, just all the beautiful things. So I think I try to have a sense of beauty in my work. I want to, because I don't know about you, but there's a piece of me that sometimes goes to dark places in my head, and I can create art like that, and I choose not to, because it doesn't make me very happy, and it makes me not want to show it to anybody. I don't know that it's bringing any good to me or anybody else, so I try not to even do that or make anything like that or let them enter. I try to keep it something, I don't mean necessarily like a physical beauty, but, you know, just something that I find beautiful in its own way. Then design. Because of my art background, I do have a strong sense of design and how to balance things and make things work. And sometimes I wish I didn't. I wish I could just put colors on a piece and not think. This one doesn't have as much color work, but I'm working on a piece right now that's very fractured into different planes and areas for color. And I always think about what I know about color, and I wish sometimes I could just let go of it and just, you know, do something that's more pure and original. But I do, that sense is been driven into me. So I have to stick with it, I guess, to some extent. And then last, art history. It's huge. If you deny it as an artist, I think, well, nobody does. Nobody denies it. I don't think that it's had an influence. I love Gustav Klimt. I love Degas. I love Frida Kahlo, Louise Nevelson, and so Marisol, and so many more. I just have many, many influences that I draw upon, whether I want to or not. They're there, and I'm very, very grateful to those, to having learned about that and seen it. Okay, down here I've got some mentors in place. The first one is Connie Herring, and that's a picture of Connie and I just at a show. That was some of my work in the back. And Connie was my college professor and is a fantastic installation artist. Next is Hazel Belvo, and she was married most of her life to George Morrison. And the George Morrison stamp just came out, I believe, yesterday. He was an Ojibwe living in Grand Portage, and he got a full scholarship to go to a big school in New York. And he was part of the whole 60s art explosion. He's, I don't know exactly what category you put him in. He did furniture, and kind of, his paintings are impressionistic if you look at his work. But Hazel was with him. And Hazel was right there in New York, dancing with Andy Warhol. She was an apprentice for Louise Nevelson. And she was also an artist. And if you look at George's work, it was heavily influenced by her work, and likewise, you know, the other way around as well. But she's an incredible painter, and she was the head painting instructor at MCAT, which is Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And she can just walk in a room, and she's delightful, and just say, oh, I bet that was, you know, looking at a color that's a cerulean, you know, and it's this brand. I mean, she knows her color like nothing I've ever seen before in my life. And she knows brushstroke, and she's just an incredible teacher. And she's also versed in all the mediums. So I went up to Grand Marais and took master classes with her every summer until she quit, and she retired from teaching. She's still painting. She paints the sacred spirit tree that's up in Grand Portage on reservation land that people don't usually get to. When she goes, she makes an offering, but she's invited every year to go there. She and George have children there. But anyway, it's just, her paintings are incredible. She's in many museums, but she was a big influence. She helped me through a lot of things. And the last one on there is Deborah Fritz. And she's a sculptor, a clay sculptor in Abiquiu, New Mexico. And I don't have one of her pieces there. I should. That's how I learned my new work. It was based on working in her studio for a week. She's incredible. She's very soft-spoken. She's phenomenal what she does. But Deborah Fritz, it's Fritts. If you look her up, you'll be blown away by her work. I can guarantee it. So I got a exhibit here and other places, but I've just got a shot of that one. I think I brought about 20 some pieces in, and when I got a phone call from the museum, and they said, Ginny, we had a women's group meeting in the basement, and they women from all over the state, and they said, we were setting your show up, and it kind of like sold out. And I said, they said, we haven't had that happen. And I said, that's crazy. There was, I think, one left that I have, but it was crazy. It was a weird feeling. Part of it was because I hadn't priced work before, and it was very affordable, but I was really happy to have it going places. I really was. So a lot of those pieces went to probably people right around this area. For sure they did. I know that. But so these were the Canopic Jars, and again, I was doing Canopic Jars, and then I taught my students about them as well. And we all got a really big kick out of making those. Mine had a human face of a woman, and I think they dealt with holding and protecting. The vessel is, you know, it can be thought of as a space that's a protective, maybe sacred space. And then the top bowl, maybe an offering or something like that. I have a person that I know that bought one of those, and she burns her sage in the top. And, you know, so it could be a ceremonial piece. I guess everybody has another story, you know, their own story about, you know, a piece when they do it. Then I started doing my Raccoon Work, and I was thinking that there was an important connection in when I started that, but I can't really think of it right now, so I'll just skip past that. But again, here you can start to see my themes coming through. This one's called Sticks and Stones, and there's a woman, and the resolution up there isn't as good as here, but the body is coppery. And then I've got a piece of driftwood in her body. And whenever I make a shape inside a woman's body, to me, that's like a womb. That's like a protective space to hold and keep safe. But I've got turquoise beads holding in the stick. And then at the bottom, you can see the earth and the roots. And then horsehair. Gosh, how are we doing time-wise?
We're fine.
Okay. I had a student, he had a horse, he had horses. I think it was on 19, Highway 19, or 81. I think it was 81, because it was on the way to Brookings. And 5 of them got out and were hit. And I asked him for tails, and I said, I can do something with those. That would be better than just, going to the rendering plant. And I got the tails of these horses, and then after I used them in pieces, and that made him feel really good too, because it was just like keeping it going, giving it a next life. But after that, I called the rendering plant, and it turned out that there was a guy that lived not too far from me that worked there, and he said, we've got horse tails, they're a mess. And I said, okay, I'd like them. And so I got these tails that were wound up with dirt and vines and stickers and feces, and they were horrible. And I thought, this poor horse, And so I started soaking them and cleaning them and brushing them and bundling them. And to me, it was very therapeutic, because I thought, even if the end for this horse wasn't so good, maybe I'm doing something good with it, and it's going into a beautiful piece, and it's there, And so I don't know, I think some people have different reactions to the hair, and that's okay, I think that's their right, however they see that, but I love to use it. I found that using my own hair in a piece isn't as popular. My students are like, you said you were going to make some earrings and wear your own hair as earrings. I would say, no, I'm not going to do it. There's another raccoon piece, and that one's about water and sound. And the raccoon is beautiful, but man, it's fragile stuff. There's another piece, a Canopic Jar again. And then that one, was one of my favorites. Instead of arms, she had feathers in the back and a long piece of horsehair, and she had rocks from Grand Marais, and then her skirt was in the style of a Gustav Klimt piece. And it was beautiful, but there was somebody who wanted it, and she acquired it. And then later on, her husband got ill, and he knocked it over. And boy, it didn't just crack in one spot. That raccoon it was, I said, why didn't you call me? I would have repaired it. And she said, oh, it was just really, it was really gone. And anyway, we replaced a piece, but it's never going to be quite like that one. But I was having some trouble when you fire raccoon. I don't know if you know about it, but I had an outdoor kiln, and I would bisque fire the piece and blaze it, put the piece into the kiln. And first of all, you don't know what your blaze is going to be. You can kind of predict a bit, but it's not going to be 100%. And then you put it into the fire, and you're about at 1900 degrees. You open the door of the kiln, and I always wore a leather trench coat, and I had big, like almost asbestos type gloves and tongs, and I would pull the piece out with the tongs, put it in a sand pit that had a nest of combustibles around it. So it would be like sawdust and hay and newspaper, and it would start a big fire. And I would let it burn for a while and then cover it with a trash can. So going from 1900 degrees to, in the winter, maybe 0, that's an incredible thermal shock. So number one, I would work on pieces for a long time and I'd lose about half of the pieces. And then the other thing was, if they did take a fall, they were gonna really go. You know, they weren't gonna just break a little bit, they were gonna go. So I switched. This is when I visited Deborah Fritz and learned about new things. I sold my Raccoon kiln and I bought a different kiln, an electric kiln that's quite large, and that's in my house. So my new work starts. This piece was at the South Dakota Art Museum for the Governor's Biennial. And this one was called Equinoctial Quartet. And it was kind of like, you know, I said, the birds in my head are calling for spring. You know, I gotta have spring. That year was a COVID year, I think, and it was, you know, really hard. This piece has gold leaf and horsehair and different things, but I really liked this piece. I did. It's not with me anymore, but I did really like that piece. Are those still up in the hills? Just wrapped up. Okay. Okay. This one is another one with the white clay. Now, the clay that I'm using, that I learned some of the techniques, is a black clay. So this one, I'll take this off here. This is the natural color of the clay, and it fires to this brown. It's called a black clay body, but it fires like a chocolate brown color. So this is the raw clay here. So you're probably wondering, well, how does it look like that? And that's, I used a white engobe. And so the white engobe is like white clay that's been watered down. I painted on. And then what's unique is you can scratch it out. You can take a tool, and it's called sgraffito, but you can take away things and go to the dark then. So it's a really fun way to work. And then I use a velvet underglazes, which are horribly expensive, but they're matte, so they don't get a ton of shine to them. When I get shine in pieces, it's from my 3rd and 4th wirings where I use oxides, and I wipe them off, and then I get, it's almost like using stain and wiping it off a piece of wood. My oxide washes work like that. So, so this piece is called The Bees Are Gone, But the Honey Remains. And yeah. Now, do you want to know the story? Okay, it's not a good one. I had a close friend, and her husband had bees, and he left her after about 25 years for another woman, and didn't take the bees. Yeah, they didn't make it. And but he had raised bees before that. But anyway, I was mad. She's kind of mad. So I guess this is a bit of a frustration piece. But she does kind of look like she's gonna fight you if you don't watch it. But anyway, yeah, that piece was in Sioux Falls for a while at Rayfeld's, and it didn't sell. And then I took it to the new gallery mat in Lincoln, Nebraska, called Gallery 9, and there were 3 people kind of fighting over it the very first day it got there. So different markets in different places. I sell a lot of big figures down there, and around here I sell more of my horses. And I do sell a few figures, but more my tall cylindrical ones. So it's different. I'm learning. This is a piece I made after my mom passed last April 14th. My mom's favorite color was yellow, and she loved the song Yellowbird. Mom and Dad loved calypso music, and we used to dance around the house to that. And I just think it's, you know, I love this piece. It was just, this was in the gallery in Lincoln, and a guy walked in, and he just said, "This is the piece of Zen I need for meditating with." And he just immediately bought it. And he said, "Her other work is way too busy for me, but I like this one." But this one, I don't know, there were 3 sisters, and but this one you can see the steps too. There's the brown clay, the black clay is what it's called, but it looks brown in the picture. Then you see how I've put on the engobes and the underglazes. And then after applying oxide washes and firing a couple more times, I end up with the piece on the far right. So you can, you know, it's a very calm piece. I like that piece a lot. Probably should have held on to it. I didn't realize how much of my mom was in that piece, I don't think. This piece is my first one called Conversations with Crow. She has the crow on her head. And then you can't see it, unfortunately, but there's a boat on top of the crow and a woman in the boat. And I think it's, you know, I do know actually, I see a counselor and to talk, and, you know, a psychologist or whatever, I talk about things, and she put me through I don't know, what do you call it? It's not really a trance, but she put me into a meditation kind of thing. And I had a bit of an idea during that time. I had visions and ideas. It was just me, you know, I wasn't like under or anything. I was just thinking, but I was visualizing at the same time. And this is one of them. So this was Conversations with Crow. I think this one was called Remembering Blue. So she's got a star shirt and her lower body is water, and then the boat on top is sailing away. This one's Conversations with Crow, Never Enough Time. And the image going across her, you can really see how I've gone in and carved out into the black clay, all the dots, and that's kind of like an hourglass in a way of time. And then the crow is speaking into her ear, and then on the top, and I'm looking for these all the time. Her crown is an vintage or antique eaves strainer. And I'm looking for them everywhere. They used to put them in your eaves to catch all the stuff. And then you take it out and strain it. And I found one at a flea market. She had a basket of them. I bought one, not knowing what I'd do with it. But it makes the best crown. And there's an egg in that. So, and then she's holding a gold-leafed egg, and the crow is talking to her. And I love the piece of wood she's sitting on. That one came from the tree dump, but it had all these insect markings on it. So I had it cut and I sanded it. And then my friend built the table down below from some scrap wood that I had around. So that piece is in Kansas. This is a new piece. Kind of a fun piece. It's just a tall, smaller piece. Really had fun playing with the glazes. I tried out a new glaze at the very end called, it's a platinum glaze. Gave me that moon. And I have a great title for this, but I can't think of what it is right now. But there's a goose on her head that's, or her, you know, flying with her. She's flying. I think I called it, oh, it's a song, Fly Me to the Moon. That's what it is, Fly Me to the Moon, yeah. Here's another head. This one I wasn't sure about. She's kind of tricky, I think. This isn't a final piece. When she was, I don't have the last piece before she went off to the gallery, but I trimmed some of the hair off the bottom and I found a different pedestal for her. But she's a little bit different. These two are wall pieces that I tried just for kind of an experiment, because it's one of the things I've always been jealous of painters. You know, you just like haul them away like this, and people put them on their wall, and they don't have to go find something to put it on and worry about a cat or a child or something. You know, so it's just I wanted to try some wall pieces. So one has fishing lures on it, and the other feathers. This one, I call this one Harbingers, and this one I did in the fall, and I've got myrrh on that piece, on the strings of beads. There's a lot of driftwood and a lot of birds, and they're kind of animal spirit women, I don't know, but my the person I talked about, who I go to talk about things, my counselor therapist person, she has these in her office. And I do like these pieces a lot. They kind of remind me, though, I did them kind of around Halloween, so it's just maybe a little bit there, but that's okay. You get influenced by everything, you know, you just can't get away from it. This one, it's done within the last few months. I think I'm kind of going back to the Canopic Jars for a while. So this one is, you can't even see the top of it, but it's really big. It's in two pieces. It's probably like this. But I was kind of playing with just black and white and texture and I wanted to put the bird on top, and I called it Ascension Vessel. And it kind of turned out, but my husband came down and goes, "Oh man, that bird should have been black." And I was like, maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I'll try something else. This is a picture of my friend Angela Behrens. I don't know if you know her, but she's exhibited here. She does a lot of bison things. I hope that's not a real bison that she's kissing there. She knows better, I hope. Maybe not. But anyway, she teaches art at Dakota State, and she will tell me what's wrong with my work. You know, you need somebody like that every once in a while that goes, "You know what, I think right there, I think that's what you need is that area." And that's really invaluable to have that, you know. Not very many people will tell you that, because, and I don't always agree. I don't always agree with her, and I'll say that, you know, I'll say, "Nah, I don't know, I think I need it that way." Not afraid to say that, but she and I have worked together on some things. And so one day we were outside in the summer, and I was making clay, and she stopped by and she started making little bison with clay. She does a lot of clay bison things. And I was like, I don't know what to make today. We were just sitting outside, and I thought, maybe I'll make an animal too. And that's when the horses started. And I don't know, my friend Z, who's sitting over here, she's a horse girl, one of the originals. I think she and our other friend Diane, they're always with, you know, with their horses and things. And I really don't have a lot of horse background. It's weird. My grandpa, he raced one of those little, are they called selkies or something? Those little carriage horses that you trotted with. Yeah, he raced those and got my grandmother furious. You know, she hated that because it was dangerous. But he would race those. Then my dad had a racehorse, Bolin, and I used to go to the track in around Jefferson and Sioux City. I used to go there with mom and dad. My mom didn't like to go as much, but I'd go a lot and watch the horses. And she'd always tell me to stay back. And then Patty had a horse, Terry had a horse, but not me because I was allergic. So I think this is me getting back, you know. I was doing a demonstration on horses once, and both of my sisters were there. And they're from kind of far away. So they had come up for this opening of my artwork, and I was demonstrating, and I said, well, you know, I was telling these people who were standing around, I said, you know, I'm doing these horses because my therapist said I was denied. And both of my sisters got to have horses, and I didn't. So this is my way of working through that time. Poor Terry's just ready. My sister Terry's just like, I'm so sorry. You know, I was teasing her because, you know, I had a mini bike. So I got around. But I love making the horse. I'm just having so much fun with it. And then I work with a really good friend of mine, John. He's a carpenter, just not a professional or anything, but he kind of likes to get in there and help me with parts and pieces. And again, these are flea market things, like the legs are off. Those are croquet sticks or stakes. And I use a lot of chairs from rocking chair staves or whatever you call those things in the back. And I use the horse hair again, of course, but I've made probably, I don't know how many horses I've made at this point, a lot. But, you know, they're harder for me to get started with because I don't have that, like, it's not a figure, it's not me. It's something else. So they're a little bit harder. I actually have commissions for some horses, and that's hard because I don't, in some cases, know the person and they want something specific, and that's hard. That's not really my thing. I kind of work from, the clay always kind of directs me, but I kind of work from my own experience. So that's a hard one. This is a piece I'm working on right now. It's in the kiln. This is just wet here, but she's really pretty. She comes apart. I really like her. I didn't know for sure what I was doing on that one, just kind of messing around. I wanted to make kind of a fancy dress, I think. I don't know. And I used a sewing tool, a tracing wheel to kind of break it up. And then I don't know. I just had a lot of fun with it. And I think it's gonna really come through the fires nicely. When I opened up the kiln this morning to look at it and a few horses, the colors have brightened a lot. So the oranges are really coming out, and you can't even see the oranges right now too well, but I think it's gonna be really fun. And I'm gonna take this through. So right now it's got slips and envelopes and underglazes on it in the first bisque firing. So next I'm gonna put an oxide wash on it, a dark one, and wipe it down a bit. And that'll go into all the crevices. She's got dots in places on her, and all of those will come out. And in all those dotted lines where I drew those in the creases, like in the face, wherever there's a recessed area or an undercut, it'll go in there and it'll darken. And then I usually like after that firing, I go in and I put a little bit of clear in a few places if I want to leave the piece, or I mean, not leave it, but you know, if I want to use a metallic or a mother of pearl type thing later. And then I put on also an oxide wash. It's not really an oxide, but it's rutile, and it's a golden color. And it's almost like, kind of marries everything together. It's kind of a golden wash on everything. And I put that on, and then when it comes out, I take it way up in it. I high fire it at that point, and that really strengthens it. It gets the clay body up to the, you know, the point I want it. And then after that, if I want to put a metallic in, like I use gold, this piece is going to get some gold in a few areas. And then in the head of that piece, it's got a whole line of openings and holes for me to put horsehair in. So that's the piece that's coming up next. One of the things that's kind of fun is that the reason I ended up at Gallery 9 in Lincoln is because my daughter goes to school in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I was she was in class one day and I was at an antique store, and there was a woman working, and she said, I used to teach art. I'm retired now. What are you doing? And I said, well, I used to teach art too. We both taught for 35 years. We had this big conversation going on. She's a silversmith now, making jewelry. And I said, you know, for me, it was either like I was gonna go learn to be a silversmith, or I was gonna delve into clay deeper. And of course, you know, I went into clay more, but I always really, I love jewelry. And so I don't have anything on, but I do love jewelry. So anyway, we were talking, and she said, can I see your work? And I showed her, and she goes, this is kind of like Vonnie Sparks' work, but she's a painter, but she does these figures and these people, these women. And so she said, you got to go see your work at Gallery 9. So I walked in and I asked this woman there, can I see Vonnie's work? And she takes me around, and then I told her why. And then she invited me to join the gallery. She was the owner, and I didn't know that at the time. And it, you know, it turned out wonderful. I love it. And this, in October, the first Friday of October in Lincoln, Nebraska, I have a show with Vonnie Sparks and Bob Escobar. And Bob's kind of like he's a wonderful painter as well, much more folk art style. Bonnie's more of a surrealist, which is dreamlike qualities. And then my work. But the thing that we're doing is we're sending each other images as we create. So we're all going to be influenced by each other. And what we're hoping for is that all three of us will be tied together when that show opens. And I'm very excited about that. Very excited. And then I think I'll just end with, I just worked last weekend in Lincoln. And when I walked in to the gallery, instead of seeing work from all like 30 artists or whatever there are up, there was work by one woman, and her name is Sharon Check. And Sharon has been an original member of the gallery for 28 years, almost 30 years. And she just passed. And she taught art for 34 or 5 years, just like I had. And she loved mermaids. And I had always kind of had this weird thing for mermaids, not Ariel and Disney, but like mermaids from other cultures, and just looking at how people depict this water woman, this spirit. And to me, it's like this environmental water woman. You're just gonna clean out the ocean or something. But anyway, I was surrounded by all this work, and then people started telling me about why she did all this stuff. And she did fish and mermaids. They're beautiful big paintings and very affordable. Everything had a red dot on it. Everything was fine. And she all of a sudden starts putting crows in all the pieces, and that's when she lost a granddaughter. She loved, that made her very sad for a while. So she started to add a crow. They're the most beautiful crow you've ever seen. They're violet and blue and fluffy and full of expression. You know, they bob their head in different ways in painting. But then she had two pieces over on the wall, and One of them talked about dying, and that was really hard. I won't talk about that one too much, but down below, she had a triptych that she made, and she said, once I had a dream that I had died, and I went to heaven, and heaven wasn't as I expected. I was at the bottom of the ocean, and I was surrounded by mermaids and fish and seashells, and they were all singing to me, and they sounded kind of like monks. And she went on, went on and on, but it was just the most beautiful piece. And while I was working, all of a sudden, 4 people came in. And I said, oh, you gotta look at this work. And they said, we know, she was our teacher. And just listening to them talk about her. And so I told the owner, Judith, what had happened, that the students came in, she goes, wouldn't it be nice to be talked about like that someday? That people remembered and they enjoy. But I felt like I was in in the most special place for the last couple of days down there working, surrounded by this beautiful work. And it had a playful, beautiful spirit about it. I just so enjoyed it. But I don't know, my life with clay, I hope it keeps going. I hope I plan to keep creating as long as I can. I have Viking disease is what they call this, but it's not hurting anything yet. So as long as my other fingers stay okay, had it treated, but it's not helping. So I just kind of keep going with it. But I think I can work without it. If it gets in the way too much, I'll have to have them take it away or something. I don't know. Anyway, I would like to open it up for questions. Real quickly on this piece. This was kind of an experiment in cutting out a couple of steps. I didn't use envelopes here. Obviously, I left the clay to its natural color. I didn't use the Rudel wash later, and I didn't use any of the metals, but I kind of like the way it turned out. I have it sitting in my kitchen right now, and she's kind of up on a thing above my wine. But anyway, I'd like to open it up for questions.
Yeah, Ginny, could you tell people about Journey Room?
Oh, yeah. Journey Women was something that I talked to Connie Herring about. And what we did was we thought it would be neat to have a piece that a lot of people worked on. And I had read a little bit about it, something similar like that, passing pieces around, whether it's a postcard or something that gets in an envelope and gets mailed around or things like that. So Connie and I think Donna Hazelwood, where she was a biology professor at DSU, were in the cities, and we were talking, and we came up with this idea that at Journey Woman, Connie named it, and what we were going to do was have 12 women create the most basic idea of a figure in any medium they wanted. And then they would find a container for it, and the container would be sealed. And there would be a list of 12 women on there, and these would rotate. So we would meet back at that point, we met at Bracco's in Sioux Falls in their meeting room, and everybody would be in a sealed box, and there'd be a rotation of the box to the next person. We'd have lunch, and then we'd get home to our studios and open it up. And there'd be a figure, and there would be a journal. And we would, just kind of keep adding to it. And then in the end, we had this extremely wow piece. They were a blast. They were really fun. You could go through a piece and say, well, Lynn sure did this. And, I can tell this is Greta Bodegard and Connie Herring or whomever. They were really fun to look at. And we got to show them to a lot of people. We made calendars and note cards and different things. The final one we did was Spirit Boat, and I made a mermaid ship. She was just like a mermaid, but her belly was like a bowl type shape. She was paper mache. And that's how I started. But I lost Julian that year. And then we had the opening of the pieces, and I got mine back and looked at it. And it had like a coffin in it, or a casket. And somebody had found a found object box that was like that shape and added it long before. I couldn't take the piece. I never did bring it home. I left it at wherever it was, and I told people to either get rid of it or they can have it or whomever could have it. I couldn't look at it. It was really hard for me, and it's nobody's fault. It just was hard. We haven't really gotten back together since then. We also lost Greta that year. And it was just, I don't know, everybody said, I need a break. I need a break. So we took a break and have never gotten back together. We all talk, but just haven't gotten back that same way. It's a pretty big investment of time. So, yeah, but it was great when it started. It really was.
It was.
Yeah,
I saw it.
yeah, thank you, yeah. Any other, yes?
Could you tell us a little bit more about the first year I assume you had and how you.
Oh, yeah, okay, that I had to learn, you know, nobody had really told me. So the horsehair, I kind of wash it in big pieces and bundle it and keep it tied with rubber bands and string and stuff. And I have a lot of it, I have almost a whole table of it. And anyway, when I'm ready to attach it, I'm gonna go back a couple of slides. Okay, yeah, this will be good. On the first two, the black and then the red and black, what I do is I take a piece of, I think it's called seam facing or binding tape. It's the kind of one that's got a seam down the middle, the double-sided one, and I open that up and I put glue along there and I have it pinned in place and on a piece of cardboard, and then I align the horsehair on there, and then I flip the other side over and I use pins to hold it down while it dries. And then I have a long strip of a mane there when I pick it up. And so I insert that into a channel. I carve a channel along here on the horse when I'm making it. One of the things with shrinking, I've had that channel close on me. And then I can't do a thing with it, it's done. But as long as that stays open, I can put that down in there. And I glue it in place and then I trim it. Sometimes I over trim. It's fun. It's like, you know, you're not supposed to cut your hair, not supposed to cut your doll's hair. Well, I get to cut my horse's hair. But then on the black and white horse, I did a different thing. I took, it's like a jingle. It's a piece of, I don't know, they're made in different colors of metal, but they're a tube that's narrower on one end and larger. It's kind of like a jingle. There's a name for it and I can't think of it right now. But anyway, I cut the horsehair, I put glue in there and stick the horsehair in, and I make all these single pieces. And then I put holes then along the mane, and I, you know, kind of open them up pretty deep. That's great too for air to go through the piece, you know, because you always want a lot of air going through the piece. Has to be hollow. If you make something solid, it's not going to make it through the fire. Not very, it just doesn't. You have to work hollow air. There's a few artists who work figuratively. The one I'm thinking of is Beth Strickner. And she does these incredibly huge life-size rabbits. I mean, human-sized rabbits. They're probably bigger. Like there might be a rabbit that'd be way up here. And they're just crazy, but they're her extension of being a woman. So she hasn't been doing things that she wants to talk about, but doesn't want the woman in the thing. So there's one, it's kind of horrible that rabbit has a bride veil on. And so she's a bride, but she's full of arrows. So, you know, and things like that. So they're almost always afraid. Her rabbits are afraid a lot, at least, but I think I've read that she builds everything solid. And then she has a team of people that go in and they cut it apart and joint it and hollow everything out. And then it's fired and put back together, you know. So there's a lot of different ways to build, but you've got to have a way to, you know, lighten it up and get air through there to fire, because you don't want to trap air. Plus there's moisture. If you get moisture in there, it's not going to get through a fire. So you've got to be hollow. So yeah. Anything else?
We've got an online question from none other than Angela Behrens. Yeah, so she's noting, Ginny, that you are an excellent educator. And she's wondering, how did years and years of taking care of your students' education impact your own artistic production during your teaching career?
Well, I think, you know, I wanted my students to just not come and participate. I wanted them, when they entered my class, to enter a different thing, a different space that wasn't like school. You know, they needed a break from math, science, reading. They needed to enter a different space. And so I didn't want anybody, you know, I wanted it calm and safe. And I wanted them to feel safe to create. And I wanted to give them a lot of materials and a lot of beauty and a lot of freedom. And I think for the most part, I also pushed them. I would say, that's really good. What do you think about this? Could you even do more of that? And sometimes I think my students did work that was, you know, pretty much so, you know, it was better than what I was doing in college sometimes. I got out of the middle schoolers. And I was just so proud of them all the time, and they were proud of themselves. And so I think that translates into my career as an artist, in that I go to my studio and I find a safe place to create. And I want it to be to be a place of inspiration and beauty, and bring that into my work and to push myself. Does that answer it at all, Angela?
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you.
The next question is, how did you find time while teaching?
That was something probably selfish. You know, I kind of think about, sometimes I think I spent too much time in my studio when my kids were growing up. But I think I also was showing them that if you have something you love, you should do it. At the same time, I was doing that. And, you know, they were always in my studio looking around at things and taking their friends down. And one time I came down in the old house, I came down, and in my sink, it's old tub sink, you know, I look in there and there's all this hair all over there. And I'm like, what the heck? And they were little, and they and their friends were giving my paintbrushes haircuts. So here were, you know, I'm sure that was Julie and friends. You know, but stuff like that. And you know, I think, you know, it's just, it was that. It was probably spending time that I wish I hadn't, but you know, when I look back, I think, oh, I shouldn't have spent that much time in my studio, but it's okay too.
It is okay.
Yeah. But it was weekends and nights, you know, because you don't have your day. And summers.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
This is
very much.
This is yours, John. Take this movie for you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny, so much for being here. And I think